You know, there are moments in history when you can feel the ground shifting. My colleague Maria, Cuban family, Miami, texted me at 2 a.m. last week. Just 3 words: "It's really happening." I knew exactly what she meant. I've covered Latin American politics for over a decade. I've learned to be skeptical of the end of Cuba predictions. We've heard them too many times. But something's different now. The numbers don't lie. The silence from Havana is deafening. What's unfolding in the Caribbean isn't Cold War nostalgia. It's unprecedented. Let me walk you through the data. Early January. Caracas. Most coverage focused on the dramatic aspects. But I caught a footnote because I've been tracking Cuba's energy imports for a research project. The operation in Venezuela didn't just remove one leader. It exposed an entire Cuban support structure. 32 Cuban intelligence officers were killed defending someone else's regime. Why? Here's the deal. Venezuela was sending Cuba 35,000 to 52,000 barrels of oil daily. I pulled the shipping data. This wasn't small. Free oil, no questions asked. In exchange, Cuba provided security apparatus, intelligence infrastructure, enforcement knowledge. Think subscription service, except it's authoritarian control 101, paid in crude oil. After January 3rd, the shipping logs show nothing. Routes that ran like clockwork for years went silent. Cuba didn't just lose an ally, they lost their primary energy source. Then came January 29th, an executive order that I think will be studied in policy schools for decades. Simple mechanics. Any nation providing oil to Cuba faces comprehensive tariffs on all exports to the United States. Not selective. Everything. My Georgetown economist friend kept calling it elegant. Here's why. The US represents 25% of global GDP. For most countries, American market access isn't just important, it's essential. Run the numbers. Sell Cuba 50,000 barrels daily, and maybe $3.5 million. Or maintain tariff-free access to a $600+ billion trade relationship with the US. It's not even a calculation. It's obvious. Within 48 hours of the order, shipping patterns changed. Tankers scheduled for Cuban ports were rerouted. The Cuban government's initial response was oddly muted, then shifted to genuine concern as reality set in. After Venezuela dropped off, Mexico stepped in. I tracked the data through Lloyd's List. Mexican tankers delivered 44% of Cuba's oil imports through early January. Mexico tried walking a tightrope. Ideological solidarity with Cuba versus the USMCA trade agreement that represents their economic foundation. When the executive order landed, I spoke with a Mexico City trade lawyer. His phone didn't stop ringing for 3 days. Manufacturers panicking about tariffs. Watch Mexico's statements day by day. First, we won't be dictated to. Week 2. Shipment adjustments reflect routine commercial considerations. Translation: we are backing away without admitting we are caving. The Port of Veracruz data shows Cuban-bound petroleum dropped 73% in 2 weeks. That's not fluctuation. That's policy. And it's just math. Mexico chose prosperity over symbolism. Let me show you what's happening on the ground, backed by actual data. Cuba's electric union publishes daily generation reports. I've been archiving them for 8 months. September 2024, 3,100 megawatts daily. Mid-January, 2,400. Last week, 1,650. Cuba needs 3,300 megawatts to avoid blackouts. They're at half capacity. Cuban bloggers and journalists, risking everything to share information, report blackouts lasting 14 to 16 hours. Hospitals on backup generators, but fuel is rationed. One Santiago doctor posted they're performing surgeries only during 4-hour power windows. Public bus service reduced 60%. Food prices. Rice went from 60 pesos per kilo in December to over 300 now. Average monthly salary, 4,000 pesos. Do that math. An Inter-American Development Bank analyst showed me projections. At current decline rates, Cuba faces potential total grid collapse within 4 to 6 weeks. Not rolling blackouts, complete system failure. The government blames external aggression. But videos circulating show community meetings where people openly challenge party officials. That public dissent? That's new. That's significant. Marco Rubio's role matters from both policy and psychological perspectives. Most secretaries of state understand Latin America through briefing books. Rubio's different. His parents left Cuba in 1956, before Castro took power. Extended family stayed. He grew up hearing stories about relatives who lived through the revolution's reality. Senate testimony last week. I watched the whole thing. Senator Murphy asked directly, would this administration welcome regime change? Most diplomats dance around that. Rubio didn't. We would absolutely love to see that happen. But the US won't invade. We'll create conditions where Cuban people can make that choice. He referenced the 1996 Helms-Burton Act. It explicitly states the embargo CA ain't be lifted until Cuba transitions to democracy. Not some reforms. Actual transition. For 29 years, that law's been worked around. Rubio's position, we have a law. Let's enforce it. From Cuba's perspective, they're now facing someone with familial, generational connection to what they've done. That's personal history informing policy. Aren't these policies hurting ordinary Cubans? Let me address this with data. The UN Human Development Index shows Cuba has decent health outcomes, 79-year life expectancy, low infant mortality. But those statistics hide something. Cuba's been in economic crisis since the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. That's 34 years. A University of Havana study showed the average family has access to 60% of WHO recommended calories. They make up the difference through informal markets and remittances. This isn't new. This is the baseline. The question isn't whether current policies cause suffering. It's what's the alternative? I looked at Obama's 2014 to 2016 normalization. Theory. Engagement encourages reform. The data doesn't support it. Political prisoners actually increased. The Cuban Commission for Human Rights documented 9,940 arbitrary detentions in 2016, up from 8,616 in 2014. The regime took economic benefits and strengthened internal security. I interviewed a Cuban exile doctor, Miami-based, left in 2018. Worked in Cuban hospitals 15 years. His response, we never had enough supplies. Never had reliable electricity. This wasn't because of American policy. The crisis has been happening for decades. The regime's just been good at hiding it. Let me show you the mathematics of Cuba's situation. Cuba needs 130,000 barrels of oil daily for basic operations. Current imports based on mid-February tracking, essentially zero sustained supply. Known reserves as of January 1st, about 1.2 million barrels. Normal consumption burns through that in 9 days. But they've cut consumption to maybe 60,000 to 70,000 barrels daily. That extends reserves to 17 to 20 days. We are now in week 5. Either my estimates are off, or Cuba's receiving small deliveries not showing up in tracking systems, or they're running on fumes. An energy analyst told me, small tankers don't always show up in commercial tracking, have been spotted. But volumes that maybe extend timeline by days, not solve the problem. Cuba is scavenging. Small deliveries at premium prices, burning through whatever hard currency reserves remain. U.S. Coast Guard data. Cuban migrants attempting to reach Florida are up 340% versus last year. That's people voting with their feet. Historical comparison. I charted final months of other authoritarian regimes collapsing from economic crisis. East Germany 1989, 8 weeks after Soviet support ended. Recent Venezuela, 6 weeks from oil revenue collapse to final operation. Cuba is now in week 5. If the pattern holds, we are in the window where sudden change becomes possible. But Cuba has survived impossible situations before, the special period in the 1990s when Soviet support vanished. What we can say with confidence, the current situation is not sustainable. Something has to give. Let me game out scenarios based on probabilities. Scenario 1, managed transition, 15 to 20% probability. Government negotiates controlled transition. Releases political prisoners, agrees to elections, begins reforms. Requires rational actors choosing preservation over ideology. It's happened. Chile under Pinochet, South Africa's apartheid end. Challenge. Cuban leadership built 65 years of identity around revolutionary resistance. Negotiating feels like surrender. Scenario 2, chaotic collapse, 25 to 30% probability. System breaks down. No negotiation. Power grid fails. Government loses ability to function. Could happen fast. Romania moved in days once security forces stopped protecting the regime. Danger. Power vacuum. Who fills it? Scenario 3, Authoritarian survival, 20 to 25%, declining weekly. Cuba finds enough external support. China makes a calculation. Russia provides aid, to limp along months or years. Worst outcome because it prolongs crisis without resolving it. Scenario 4. Hybrid outcome, 25 to 30%. Combination. Maybe Havana negotiates while regional areas collapse. Maybe military takes control promising reforms. The messy middle where nobody gets what they want, but it's not total disaster. What we are witnessing is convergence of factors that haven't aligned before. Economic. The subsidy model has completely broken down. Political. US policy is being implemented by people with personal motivation and institutional power to see it through. Technological. Information control, critical for authoritarian survival, is much harder now. Generational. Younger Cubans don't have emotional connection to revolutionary ideology. They just see a system that doesn't work. Does this guarantee the regime falls next month? No. History is full of regimes surviving against all odds. But the probability space has shifted. We are in new territory. Maria's grandmother is 87. Left Cuba in 1962. Told Maria her whole life she wanted to see Cuba free before she died, but never believed it would happen. Last week, first time ever, she said, "Maybe I will see it." That's not analysis. That's hope. Whether that hope is justified, we are about to find out. I'll keep watching, analyzing, making sense of the data as it comes in. Because whatever happens next, it's going to be significant. Thanks for sticking with me through this analysis. The situation is fluid. Things could change dramatically in days or weeks. History is being written in real time. Whether you're optimistic or pessimistic, it's impossible to deny we are watching something significant unfold. The only question left: how does it end?